Again, I hope that you're keeping up with your questions because I definitely want to get them answered, and I will make sure that they will get answered. So if you have a question for any of the speakers. Our next guest is Michelle Savoy. She is the VP of Local Digital Sales at Univision, where she works across all markets to drive product strategy and digital sales solutions with a primary focus on revenue growth. Michelle brings 17 years of experience in digital media, where her expertise in sales development, operations, and transformation has driven sales teams at media powerhouses like Gannett and iHeartMedia. Please help me welcome Michelle Savoy to the stage.
Make sure I'm oriented. So, Carlos, I'm happy to see you. When I joined the company about 5 months ago, almost 6 months ago, I came across that research, and someone told me that we hired a doctor to do it and a clinician. I thought, oh my gosh, that's so great, because no media company really invests like that. So, and I've talked to Carlos, but we've never seen each other face to face. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about really marketing and the business of healthcare, and then specifically about digital and technology. So we all know that the healthcare is big business, right? Especially when we looked at the slides from Dr. Kleinberg early on, it was the baby boomers. Everybody needed to get in to take care of their health, right? So about 75% of the companies listed in the Fortune 500 are in healthcare or some sort of healthcare-related field, right? So that means there's a lot of money transacted there. But the interesting thing is that we are in the middle of a shift where new entrants are coming on board. So there's a lot of new technology and platforms and startups that are beginning to enter the space, and there's a lot of investment in this space too. So 50% of the companies are also, new companies. Here's a little bit about the venture capital and the funding. So this is what the dollar amounts look like from 2011. So you see big growth to 2015. A little bit of decline in dollars overall in 2016, primarily due to the politics and the election. But there was still a very large amount of companies funded, and so the amounts were smaller, but there were more companies getting started. So 296 were funded last year, and they were all new, either angel round, like seed round, or Series A. So what that means is we have a lot of new things happening and a lot of new players trying to communicate with all the consumers in the space. So there's a few factors that are driving this. A lot of it has to do with general consumerism and the marketplace shifts with technology generally. So the first one is really the change from being a patient, right, to a healthcare shopper. That's a really big shift, okay, because overall, marketplace-driven economy has changed this, and the Amazons of the world, right, well, one, Amazon, has really changed how our DNA is when it comes to buying and selling. We expect it instantly. We want to be able to read reviews on it. We want to take part in the active role of making that decision, not just show up at a hospital, right? So that affects everything that we do, and we see it cutting across all sectors and really changing the way people approach buying decisions. Technology itself has also been a big disruptor. There's a lot more platforms that are involved in the pathway from the time that you are entering, your visit with a doctor, all the way to the point of care. We have big technology and digital platforms, that are having screens in all the rooms, right? So you have screens in the waiting room. You have screens in the individual patient room. There are tablets with infographics that can explain to you things like that, and they're done in Spanish too. But it's affecting everything, the whole path to having a patient experience. So a little bit about the healthcare shopper. So 45% of this is all U.S., not just Hispanics. 45% of consumers are interested in telemedicine. So that has been the talk for many years. There's a lot of groups getting involved in this. We at Univision also are involved in a project like that. And then 28% of them would like to purchase insurance from a major retailer, like maybe even Amazon or Target. That's really interesting. So the tides are changing. A lot of it has to do with the marketplace and the way technology works, like I said. So if you think about Uber, that's really changed the way, a person who needs a ride, right, can reach out to someone who can provide the car. And so that is, we have many competitors in that space too. Everyone is used to just hailing their cab, picking up their phone and doing it. So we have that also with moving. If you're moving, you can pick up your app and get Dolly and say, I need a mover. There's how many pieces I have to move, and they can help you move. Every single area of commerce has something like that. And so it's important for the healthcare industry to recognize that, not fight it, and really lean into that. The other thing is really about consumer segmentation. I think we saw a lot of that with the different stuff that you've seen today. So each audience pool is going to behave a little bit differently. And so it's important to reach out to them uniquely and communicate in a way that's going to be received well and also help that group. And you cannot just say, this is my blanket technology platform, or this is my blanket marketing platform. It doesn't work like that. And you'll see a little bit more, I have even more data to show you about Hispanics specifically around technology and how you can communicate with them. And then really it's also, I think it's hard. I think anytime there's a technology disruptor and marketplace disruptor at the same time, you're talking about the change of economics, right, and the change of technology. That's hard inside the healthcare system too, because I think that the healthcare workers have to change their approach, right? Things are changing rapidly, and that is hard. It's hard in any industry. So we need to think about also the instant expectation and continual service expectation that we have as consumers too when it comes to healthcare. We expect everything on demand. We expect it anytime, 24/7, and that's going to apply to our health too. What's more important than our health, right? That's a lot more important than our delivery of our food to our hotel or our home, right? All right, so a little bit about social media. Social media impacts this tremendously. We saw some stats that Carlos showed about the survey that we did, but people are looking to social media to get all kinds of information. They get it about politics, news, weather, and health too. And so consumers are going there, but also providers are starting to go there. So providers, about 30% are using social, and the preferred platform is Facebook. It's just getting started, and what I would say here is that I think the consumers are way ahead of the providers in this space. So they're already there. It's important to be there and talk to them and make sure that we're diversifying too. So Facebook is a good platform, but also there's Snapchat, Instagram, tons of others, and we can't really resist that tide, okay? So when I talked about consumer segmentation, I think this is important for Hispanics specifically. They behave a little bit more actively in digital and social than any other group, and that's an important aspect to look at when you're making marketing decisions or platform decisions, or even, space decisions when we're going into a new space. So the thing about Hispanics is that they're highly technical, and they actually kind of skipped over the laptop and went straight to the phone. And because of that, they actually are much more in tune with all kinds of technology. So there is a perception that they're not, but the fact is they are highly technical consumers. So they're okay getting a mail-in testing kit and sending it back. They're great with telemedicine. They're open to buying things from retailers and not having it be the normal healthcare experience. So I think it's important to look at that. The other thing that's really interesting is that they're really optimistic about all this technology too. They're not afraid of it. So where there might be perception or a fear to talk about healthcare or finance or things that might scare you, I think in some ways technology makes that easier for this group. So I'm not going to talk about this because you guys know about the population growth. They're super mobile. So when you say super mobile, what does that mean? That means they're twice as likely to use mobile, okay? And they're consuming more media on it. So it's not really a shift of Hispanic consumers going from traditional media and then moving over to digital media. They're just consuming more and more media. So what you see often is that you're going to see them in different, when you look at different types of assets and different types of media in digital, they hyper consume 2 times, 5 times more than the general public, okay? So they're going to over-index in Facebook too, which I think there's a perception a little bit about age in Facebook, but when we talk about the multi-generational approach and the way that decisioning happens with Hispanics, it makes sense that Facebook is an important part of how they communicate because they want to be able to communicate with their aunts and their grandmothers because everybody's there. Make sense? All right, a little bit about sharing content. So Hispanics are hyper sharers when it comes to social. They're not just passive participants in social media. They share And that's part of their activity and part of the communication they have with their culture. And there's a little bit of difference in the makeup of the Hispanic heavy share social person and the person that doesn't share. And the difference really is that those who share tend to be a little bit younger, okay, so they're the ones that are sharing, and they tend to be bicultural, meaning that they're living in two worlds. They have children in the home, and they are more affluent and employed. So all those that are insured in the more affluent groups we talked about earlier, those are the heavy social sharers, and they're the ones that can be the ambassadors of change and communication. Now, there's still the other population, the rest of the Hispanics, they're still there, but they are, thank you, they are more recipients, and they're absorbing the information, but it's trusted source. So a little bit more about social. So in the Hispanic community, these are general numbers. Hispanics tend to share social, whether it's articles or video, whatever it is, they're sharing about 5 times more than non-Hispanics. And that's a lot, okay? 5 times more. So not only they're sharing, but they're also actively engaging in the content that's being shared with them. So 35% are actually clicking on stuff that's shared. And then that also leads to purchase, okay? So 2 times of the people are more likely to actually have that influence or purchase. How many of you guys have your communication in social today? Can you raise your hands? Great. How many of you want to do more and more? Yeah, I think it's really important. So this is some, anytime you can say Facebook or Google says, I always like to include that. So Facebook is going to say this to you. So this is more about bilingualism and bicultural. So Facebook, as we have shown, is the #1 platform for healthcare, generally. The #1 platform for Hispanics. And now we're going to look at what they say about what that means and how to communicate with Hispanics in this space. So 2 in 3 bilingual Hispanics are going to read and watch videos in Spanish. And so the perception of the brands, we talked about that with a couple other slides that Carlos had too. It's really important. When that message comes in Spanish, there's an implied trust factor that happens, and that is going to help increase the shareability or the earned media that happens with the messages that you're putting out. So let's talk about Latinos specifically, because they're that big driving force. When Dr. Kleinberg was showing that orange bar is getting bigger and bigger, that's the millennial generation, and they all have children, right? They're very big drivers of the population. They're interesting because, like Misty shared, she's 100% American and 100% Latina. And I think that's really what's happening here. So there's more opportunity to communicate with this generation of consumer, but it's important that we do it in very distinct ways. So while you can communicate with them as being 100% American in the way you would communicate in general market, you also can communicate with them solely as 100% Latino, 100% Hispanic, with cultural references and language. So Misty actually gave me this, and I recreated it so it would be the color family of the slide. But this is a good illustration. So millennials are going to operate millennial Hispanics are going to operate just like a millennial general market, white, Asian, African American, doesn't really matter. They're very independent when it comes to really not being so brand-centric, right? They're independent-minded, they're open-minded to lots of new social ideas and cultural ideas. But what's interesting about the Hispanic millennial is that while they have that going on, they also have very traditional communication at the same time. So they're independent, yet no decision is not made without a family, okay? And when you look at this sort of radiating, circle, the heart of that is really the mother, and then it's the parent, and then it's the extended family, and then it's the neighbors, and then it's stars and media, right? And then you're talking about influencers too. But what happens is the communication is if someone's sick or if someone's looking to make a behavior change in their healthcare, it will be discussed by every single one of these groups, right? And it goes back and forth until a decision is made. It's the same sort of decision if you're going to buy a car, buy a house, get insurance. It all happens that way. So the connection piece is really important because you need to, if you're going to influence one consumer you're trying to go after, you have to really influence all. Meaning you're going to have to try to go direct with the rest of the family and also have really reinforcing messages in media generally, and influencers, or those that would be recognized as celebrities in the space. So decision making is a group consumer effort, and that really makes it complicated when we're making decisions about marketing. When you're talking about video, and I think video is a really great way to communicate messages around health and personal care and that kind of thing, it's important to know that publishing video in Facebook does really well, and I think it's important for the hospitals to do that and the healthcare facilities to do that, and they are doing that. But when you align the video with a premier publisher, there's some factor that happens there that really increases the validity of that and makes it an implied endorsement, I'll say that, but it also just makes the message more valid. So publishing first with a premier media partner and then syndicating back to your Facebook page is probably the way to go. You want to have that kind of lift and uptick in the message first, and then remember, you're going to have that halo effect of 5 times more likely to share in all the radiating pieces of that message. So a little bit about culture, right? Thank you. 1 in 2 Hispanics are going to prefer to watch video that they feel is relevant to them, and they're more likely to watch ads that have that cultural reference or is in language. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you might do that. So I think being on Facebook is really important. Facebook has now become more of a television platform. They recently announced last month that they have a program called Watch. So people are getting a lot of news and information on Facebook, and they're doing it in video. There's video programming being done in serial video, and so it's a great way to do some messaging with branded content and messaging around diabetes awareness, cardiovascular, whatever it is that your message is. It's important to make sure you're doing a video in Facebook. But the other stuff you want to be doing in digital is you want to be able to do audience targeting too. So I know that we have HIPAA compliance laws, but there's data that we do have available through Crossix and others that we can actually get very pinpoint in terms of conditions and medications and that kind of thing, and target people that way with video and with display alongside social. And then contextual targeting is another way to get at that too. So contextual targeting is keyword targeting, and that's a great way to try to find consumers in the moment when they're researching something. So if you are doing a big media campaign, you have billboards, you have television, you have radio, that message is going to get out, and what's going to happen is that people will be triggered to go online to get more information. Whether it's your information or someone else's, they're going to go and search. And they will end up consuming articles that are relevant to the message that you're putting out. And that's when you need contextual targeting to find them. You want to keep messaging to them until they convert as a customer or as a patient. And then what we can do also is lookalike audience modeling. I think that's important too. So once you are putting your message out, we'll know who is reacting to that message, maybe signing up for a physical, maybe signing up for diabetes education, whatever that is. And we can look at those people and then model an audience segment that looks like those and continue to message to that group that we know is highly responsive. The other thing to be aware is, like I said, multi-generational marketing is important. So if you have one message for one group, you must go up a generation, maybe 2, and go down. So it's important to know that when you're trying to do the healthcare awareness, the education needs to be, the whole family needs to participate, and different levels of messaging might have to be created. So this is how I think about marketing for healthcare, and it's actually pretty similar to how I think about marketing for most things. You want to have your social platforms. It's really important to have video, especially around information and healthcare. You'd have to have infographics. I think that's really helpful. And then tips. That's the kind of thing you want to program on social, whether you're publishing yourself or aligning with media companies. And you want to do it pretty regularly, right? You want to keep that message going so that people can follow and share, and then follow along stories and more tips the next day. And then on websites and apps, I think it's important to make sure you have articles, native articles also too, that will publish out and drive people back to your website. Profiles are important, especially with Hispanics. Profiling families, narratives about the doctor, how they connect with the community, narratives about the family are important, and then recipes and healthy cooking and tips, all that stuff is great. So when you think about doing a campaign, you can't think about one single platform. You've really got to embrace an entire large platform and think about sequencing the messaging so that you're driving maximum results. I'm going to give you a couple examples that we have. So here's an example. This is Neutrogena. I wanted to give you more bigger brand examples. What they're doing to get the message out about products, and in this case it's healthy skincare, is they are doing 30-minute videos or 30-second videos and 30-minute videos on TV. And they're connecting social and television together and then driving from television to social. They have more information on social and then it goes to the website. Another one, here's Vino, another example. Same thing. The morning show, there's a segment and it's driving to social. There's question and answer, and there's also a series of videos that are on social as a television program, almost like on social. And here's an example from your hometown, okay? So here's Baylor's example. What they're doing is, the key thing that I want to stress here, what they're doing with Univision and what you should be doing with any group, is they're thinking in that multi-channel approach. So there's social here, there's articles here, there is powered up media in terms of broadcast to help drive that awareness. And so what we've seen here is because of the multi-platform setup of the campaign and the way they're sequencing messaging, the click-through performance in digital is much higher than normal, and it's all because it's all woven together. That's why the performance is so high. And this program continues year after year. And so that's all I have to show you today. I'd love to take some questions. We're going to do questions now? No questions.